conservation easements and purchasing development rights that are very important, especially when we're talking about farmland or open space conservation. Your capital budgeting for things like infrastructure, right? So if you have areas of the town that you're looking to direct growth, you certainly want to make sure that the infrastructure is in place to support that growth, and you want to budget accordingly to make sure that you have that infrastructure there and can operate it efficiently. You might be talking about partnerships with other entities outside of the town, whether they be regional or statewide. So there are a lot of different elements that we can bring to bear to help implement the plan. So this is the very beginning of the process. We are just starting out. In fact, in September, well, actually, the committee met for the first time, I believe, in July. And then we came on board in September. And we've had 2 committee meetings thus far, September and October. And so we are basically just getting started. The town has decided to do this. They've planned to plan, right? They've created the committee. They've gotten a process started. We've been brought on board to help the town with this process. Where we're at now is in the assessment of what the current state is. All right, so we're starting to look at information about the town. How has the town changed since the last plan in 2005? Where has growth occurred? Where has traffic increased? Where have there been issues with competing interests in one resource or another? And we're talking to first the committee and now with the public through a series of meetings about issues and concerns going forward. Again, the very beginning. Once we turn into next year, we'll be starting to think about the vision piece. Okay, where does the town want to go? And ultimately, how do we get from here to there? So a number of different steps. What I like about this little list of steps to preparing a plan, which I obviously took from somewhere else a long time ago, it talks about, at the bottom, implementation, setting priorities. That's really important. Oftentimes you'll see a plan that seems to forget that piece, but I think that's probably the most important piece of the plan. And then, maybe figuring out how do you monitor for results? How do you check back from time to time and see how you're doing? I think that's also an important component of the plan. So we're starting with the 2005 document, of course. For me, this is kind of fun personally. I happen to be one of the key people who worked on the 2005 plan. So for me, it's an opportunity to kind of see where things worked, where things maybe didn't work so well, you don't always get to do that. So personally, professionally, I'm very interested in this effort. In a couple of years after the plan was adopted, the town did adopt zoning and subdivision regulations that were meant to implement the plan. They were pretty comprehensive changes. It was the first time in many, many years that the town had really done a wholesale look at the zoning, so that was a pretty significant project. And a few years after that, in 2010, the town did set up a committee to review the plan and to kind of check back and see how things were going, areas that maybe could be improved upon. But at that particular moment in time, they didn't make changes to the document. This is now the opportunity to do that. All right, so we're starting, of course, by making sure we look at those and understand those documents. We're starting as well to look at some data, and I'm not expecting you to be able to see all the categories on the map here, but we're looking at things like zoning. We're looking at things like land use in the town, the patterns of development in the town. We're looking at environmental features in the town, wetlands, floodplains, all of those kinds of things. Information about school districts. I mean, maybe you all know this, maybe you don't, I don't know, but there's certainly two major school districts in the town, right? North and South Colony are the biggies. But there's actually pieces of 4 other school districts in the town as well, right? So that's, knowing kind of where those boundaries are and is very helpful as we start to go forward. We're also talking to some of our friends in the region. We've been talking to the Capital District Regional Planning Commission. They do, for example, school enrollment projections for the South Colony School District. I got my hands on those recently from them. CDTC, the transportation planning folks for the region, understanding what projects they have in the pipeline that might impact the town. We've been mapping some of the development that's taken place since the last comprehensive plan was adopted. So there's a lot of different pieces that we're just starting to pull together and just starting to talk about with the committee. But it's important to have that sort of base of information as you get started. Key though, and the reason why this is the very first of our public meetings for this process, is getting the communities involved. Because really, for the plan to have a life and for it to really be followed through on going forward, I think you have to have the involvement of the community. They need to feel ownership of the plan, and ultimately that will lead to commitment to implementing the plan. And so we have a number of different things that we're doing. This set of workshops that starts tonight, I call these issues identification, right? And just trying to understand the concerns. So in the beginning of the process, even though we know from the committee that we have some understanding of what those concerns are now, we want to make sure we're not missing something. All right. We will have a meeting in the beginning of next year, a visioning workshop that will be to start to discuss the goals and so forth of the plan. There'll be a townwide meeting when we have sort of initial recommendations, and then at the very end of the process, there'll be public hearings. Those are the formal legal requirements that we must fulfill before the plan can be adopted. There's a minimum of 2. The committee itself will have to hold one, and then the town board will have to hold at least one before it can adopt the plan. But what I like to say is when we get to the public hearings, hopefully we're not really surprised by what we're hearing. Right? If we've done a decent job of this, we should be pretty secure that the plan reflects the comments and the concerns that we've heard from the community. We are also going to be doing a community survey. We've been talking about that with the committee. The details of that are still being worked out, but we're thinking about and likely to be working with the Siena Research Institute on that effort, and that'll be in the springtime. So the committee is actually going to help us because this is a big town. Maybe go out and reach out to some of the organizations that are active in the community and get some feedback from them. And we do have a website. We're still working on some of the kinks on the website, I think, but through the planning department, there is a comprehensive plan section. There is a spot where you can provide some questions or suggestions. They go right to us. All right. So at any point after tonight, if you think of something, always feel free to go back and provide your comments there. So again, we're at this very beginning point in the process. If I think going forward, what do we have coming up? The committee meets once a month. Our next meeting is next week on Wednesday, I believe, right? Thank you. Wednesday. Next week we meet over at the Public Operations Center, and those meetings start at 6 o'clock. Public is welcome to attend, and many of you do take advantage of that opportunity. Those meetings are a little different than this kind of meeting, though. They're really working meetings of the committee. There is an opportunity for some public comment at the end, but unlike tonight where most of our time will be spent discussing things, those meetings, again, are really the time for the committee to do its work. This series of community workshops will be going on from tonight into December. So before the holidays, we will have 5 of them in different locations around the town. I think the idea here was we wanted to try to get out into different parts of the town, make it a little bit easier for people to participate and express their concerns. And those concerns can be specific to that particular area if they want to be, or they can be town-wide concerns. We're not limiting that conversation. So these are the different areas. We're in the Colony North section, the pink color up on the top tonight. And, this area might have been good if we could lower the lights, but all right. Well, this area is basically, the area north of Route 7, right? A lot of it is impacted by the Mohawk River and the areas along the Mohawk River, and then some of the higher ground sloping up from there. Of course, we've got Route 9, the Northway, cutting through this part of the town, just like much of the rest of it. You have the city of Cohoes, which is not kind of sliced out. The city of Cohoes on the right side is a separate municipality. So after this set of meetings tonight and through December, next year there'll be, again, lots of opportunities for you to continue to stay involved in this process. So there'll be the visioning workshop I mentioned, the community survey probably in the spring. I'm guessing we're probably in the spring to early summer. We'll be in the town-wide public meeting, the plan recommendations, and the schedule is something that can move depending on what we need to do. But we're looking at probably the early fall for the public hearings and adoption. All right, at this point. So, all right. So that's enough for that part of it. So what I'd like to do is spend some time trying to answer two questions. And I break it up this way because, and I'll be perfectly honest with you, it's if we just get right to what are the concerns. Typically what happens, everyone comes with their whole list of, this is the thing I'm mad about, or I'm concerned about this. And that's great, and we're gonna get all those things down. But I think it's useful, it's instructive to start with, what is it that you like, right? I mean, there's a reason why you are all taking time out of your busy schedule to be here tonight. There's a reason why you have chosen to live or work or whatever the case may be, or both, in Colony. So there's got to be some things about this town that you really like and value. And I want to make sure we get a nice, clear list of that, because when we get into the plan, those are the things that we want to try to maintain, right? Those are the things we want to try to preserve going forward as to the degree that we can. So let's try to get the likes first. Yeah.
I adore the bike hike path along the Mohawk River.
Yeah.
I'm down there virtually every day.
Nice. Yeah, it's really a beautiful resource, right? Pretty well connected to other trail systems, right?
Yeah,
And the Erie Canal
and there's
Trail.
a new, relatively new park that's been constructed by the town of Colony that I forget the name of, but
Down there.
yeah, down there,
Mhm.
close to the train station.
Okay. And that's a new one?
Well, it's been there 4 years. Now,
Okay,
something like
all right.
that. Relatively new.
Relatively new.
Yeah.
Right.
I also love Ashford Glen, which is a small preserve that's owned by the Mohawk Hudson Land Conservancy.
Good. Yes, sir.
Centrally located.
Centrally located, yeah. I mean, one thing, I guess it's both a blessing and a curse, right? Is that this region is somewhat unusual, if you think about it. There's not, most of the time, if you go further west in the state, you go to Syracuse, you go to Rochester, you've got the city in the center, and then all the suburban towns and then the rural areas
What
as
I
you
mean
go further
is
out.
3 cities.
This is
Twice
right.
as-
You're right between Albany, Schenectady, Troy, right? And Colony is right in the middle of it, and it's unique in many ways because of that. All right, other positives. Yes, sir.
We have excellent public schools
Yeah.
and an excellent police department and EMS and fire safety protections.
Emergency services.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would add safe
So safe.
area.
Yeah.
Safe.
Feels pretty safe. Good. That's important. Yes, sir.
Town, the parks, park, Mohawk, Colony Park, and crossings.
Yeah. I mean, how many of you remember when the Crossings was built, right? I mean, that's just a beautiful park, beautiful resource. It's really nice. And there's many others around the town, which is great. Yeah. I saw a hand. Where was the other hand? Oh, all right, Steve.
Hey, Mike, thanks. Excellent points from the Senator, 46 hours. I would say deep preservation of historic resources. 400 years of history. Actually, it goes back to the Iroquois Confederacy. Anyone, a student of history, can appreciate the right in the center. Very rich fabric, cultural resources would be the short.
Historic resources, maybe cultural.
Cultural resources, very rich historic fabric. National significance.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thanks.
Yes, sir.
Great mix of commercial and residential.
Okay.
Help with that tax base.
So you're thinking of that from the standpoint of tax
Tax,
balance.
also convenience.
Convenience, okay. So a mix of res and commercial. So, yep, there's, balanced tax base, convenience. There's really nothing that you can't get, right, nearby. keep going, I like that. Let's get more than one sheet here. What else? Positive things that you love about Colony, yes, ma'am.
Library.
What's that?
Library.
The library, yes. Yeah. Seems like a very active meeting place, right? And a lot of good things, good resources there. Again, yeah.
Our services in general.
Okay.
We have outstanding town services.
So you're talking about things like DGW, parks, all those things that the town provides. Right? Okay, good. Steve?
Access to important waterways for recreational opportunities, in addition to the park. Water access is key.
Mm-hmm.
And
And the Hudson, right? Yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
Absolutely. Okay, yes?
A sense of community.
Okay. No, it's good that you can say that in a town of this size, right? I mean, I don't know if everyone agrees, but it's something that you sometimes associate more with a smaller place. Colony's a big town, but I do get the sense that people know one another, care, get active and involved in Colony, which is great. So yeah.
Neighborhood schools.
Neighborhood schools. Yeah, that's always important, especially that elementary level, right? Okay. Someone else? Yes, sir.
There are certainly pros and cons, but the benefits of having the airport close are good.
Okay, yeah. So, Steve, you'll be happy to hear this. The airport makes our list of likes. Yes, there are pros and cons, right? Like when you're at City Field and the planes go overhead, sometimes that can be annoying, but yes, it's convenient and it's great to be right there. Yes?
Senior programs?
Senior program. Yeah. Very active senior programming. Okay, I guess.
Those services that goes, they actually pick you, will pick it up, going up on a bus. It really helps to keep people who are to take care of their parents and actually keep their parents and take care of them because they help you out in the day.
So the transportation portion?
And daycare program.
Senior services programs.
Oh, okay.
They just also
Yeah.
goes back to the sense of community.
Yeah.
Very much so.
Keep the community together.
Keep they can say here in the community. Yeah. Okay. What else? Other positives. So this is impressive. This is good. But I wonder if there's anything else. Yes.
Walking clinics and health services, there's enough health services around.
Okay. Yeah. So health services. Yeah, I guess one of the benefits of being in the middle of the region, right, is that you have a pretty good congregation of health services. That's very helpful. Yeah. What else?
I think the infrastructure is well maintained by the town.
Okay. What kind of infrastructure in particular?
The water, the sewer, the roads.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, there's certainly a lot of it. It's, again, a big town, and it's no easy task, I'm sure, but...
I know that the town is always looking at
Yeah.
making sure that everything is working the way it's supposed to.
they're paying attention to it. Yeah. Okay, good.
Youth services and programs?
Youth services, too. Okay. What kind of youth services, for those that aren't familiar, what kinds of...
Recreational?
Recreation. Educational?
They do counseling,
You do everything. Okay, great. Anything else? All right, so let's just take a quick look. Some of the specific things like the bike and hike path and the park, the Ashford Glen, which is like a reserve or something, right? The central location, the schools, the emergency services, police, fire, ambulance, great park facilities, historic and cultural resources, a very rich history. Mix of residential and commercial is both convenient and positive in terms of some balance in the tax base. Got the library, which I know a lot of people are very fond of. Town services generally are considered to be pretty good. Access to waterways, sense of community, neighborhood schools, the airport, senior programming, including just the notion of being able to keep your older family members in the community. Health services, the infrastructure maintenance, youth services. It's a pretty nice list.
Can you add low crime rate?
Low crime rate, sure. I mean, I would probably just put that maybe here with the safety.
Yeah.
Low crime. Okay. Anything else?
Probably dovetails with what was Mike, an unsurpassed quality of life compared with any other community. Unsurpassed quality of life and I wonder if diversity could be referenced somewhere. The cultural diversity of our population is an asset, a value.
Yeah.
I appreciate.
Diversity, the quality of life up here.
Demographic diversity, maybe?
Okay, right. So we're talking about cultural diversity, demographic diversity.
These are aspects of unsurpassed quality.
Yep. Unsurpassed. That's a big claim.
Yeah.
But, it's nice to hear it nonetheless, right? What else? Is that it?
There's a higher education institutions in our town, Siena College.
Yep.
And we're by other, State University of Albany, RPR, Union College, so we're near other higher education.
Right. And that adds a lot, I think, vitality, right? Both in terms of the students and the things that you can take advantage of sometimes as a member of the public on those campuses. Absolutely. Okay, yeah.
I like the idea that there's still some trees and some green.
Some trees and some green still, yeah? Yeah, I mean, the town obviously has grown, but you still do have some nature, some trees, green. Okay. And, yes, sir.
How about jobs? I mean, a large segment of our population is state workers.
Yeah.
I mean, the local establishments or businesses, it seems like every one of them has they're looking for help. There's plenty of jobs available in the local area.
Yeah, again, being, I think that kind of ties back to that centrality, right, of location. There's certainly within the town, there's a lot of jobs, and very close by, there's a lot. Yeah.
I say the whole area has everything that you could want. Whatever you want, it's there. You have restaurants, you have movies, you have...
Entertainment?
Yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, it offers a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Anything you want, it's out there.
So we're talking about entertainment and restaurants and shopping and
Grocery stores.
grocery stores, yeah. Restaurants, retail.
Anything you want, we've got it all.
Sounds good.
Except Costco.
Except for Costco. There's always one to cry. What else?
I just wanted to express a little bit more with the infrastructure. It's just not storm sewer. It's that we have a state-of-the-art sewer department, sewer system right down the road. Plants, so your pure waters plant, which is a sewer plant, the water plants. These are excellent, up-to-date, new facilities that that a lot of communities don't really have and don't have access to really have them that close to. For a sewer plant, you need to have water and things like that. I think that we're very lucky to have those structures that have been taken care of and maintained over the years to the ultimate.
Okay.
For the future, 40, 50 years into the future.
Right, so they're in place and they're well taken care of and thinking forward thinking. Okay, good. Well, wait, I said no committee. We're not going to do that. Almost got me. Yeah. So we're talking about price points. We're talking, do you also mean like different styles of housing or different kinds of housing? Single family, is
Yes,
that?
I was looking at more like the value.
The value, okay,
If
so-
someone is looking to purchase a home in this area,
Yeah.
whatever their budget is, they can usually find a home from low to high.
From low to high. Right, okay. Yeah,
Can we add a stable economy,
you
or
can.
is that under the jobs?
Sure. We'll put that, I'll put it right kind of as a subset of that, stable.
Do you have enough churches, religious organizations around? Yeah, cross-section.
Cross section, so, all right. Yeah. Well, you guys are making me work here on the writing. That's good. Yep.
Hey, there was a joke, most people don't know, we have a reservoir, an emergency reservoir in Clifton Park that's available to us. A lot of people get run into trouble with water, we will never run into trouble with water, we have that available to us. And, our building department, engineering department, all the plan that is done, Colony is known for difficult, normally known for difficulty of getting things passed, but that makes people bring more quality stuff to us.
Okay, so I think that's new here, right? Quality. So you're talking about development?
We get quality development, the houses that are built, they're watched over by our, building department, to make sure that the building is good quality, so hopefully, hopefully we never have it, but if we do have problems, hopefully they pull together, like in other areas, you've seen houses fall apart or heavy winds and stuff like that, we shouldn't have that problem, because our building department is watching out for us.
Okay, yeah, so oversight, I guess. Maybe that's, just want to make sure that, when I look at this tomorrow, it still makes sense to me. Okay, boy, I'm getting a lot of the same hands. Anyone who hasn't yet contributed, I just want to make sure that, I don't want to feel it. No? All right, well then we'll go right back. A couple more. Let's do this. Steve, go ahead.
Thanks, Mike. Under the infrastructure topic, I'd cite our landfill recycling center, resident access to the local landfill. It was problematic elsewhere recently.
Yeah, you really don't know how much of a pain that is until you don't have it. Because I've moved in over the last number of years. I live down in the Hudson Valley now, and the community I live in doesn't have a lot of that. It's a pain in the neck. Anyway, you don't need to hear that. Yeah.
Low tax rate for the services that are provided.
Okay. Yeah. Low taxes relative to services.
Under the recreational, I think we have a golf course, we have the park, and we have swimming the Colony Pool.
The pool, right? Yeah, absolutely.
That's almost been well kept. And I think you can take a boat out of the landing there somewhere too.
I don't know, is that true?
Well,
Yeah.
there's a landing there for boats.
Okay. Let's just make note of that. So,
Parks.
yeah. Pool, golf course. A variety of, from everything from passive and walking trails and so forth to more active kinds of things. Yeah?
We got great youth sports programs.
Youth sports, okay.
And the facilities that are provided by the town.
All the same things.
Is that we want to make sure we can still say about the community in 10 years. These are the kinds of things we hope we'll be able to continue to be proud of going forward. All right, so let's turn our attention then to concerns. So this plan, of course, it's not everything is necessarily a town. So it can be addressed by the town. Some things are, related to the airport or the state or other things, right? But we don't have to worry about that for now. What are the things that, if you think 5 or 10 years out, that you're concerned about that we should be thinking about in the plan? All right, hands go up. Let's start with
Traffic.
Traffic. Yeah. Traffic. Yes, this is the curse of the central location, partially, right? I mean, it's the yin and yang. Yep.
Despite the fact that infrastructure is on the other list, I mean, the town is huge, and in our section of the town, there's a crying need for improved infrastructure of both water and roads. And connected with the traffic is that some of the roads in the town are designed for buggies. And they really can't be widened.
So the area of the town that you're talking about, I mean, just because it might be helpful to understand, which area, is it this area that we're in tonight?
It's around the airport, Bly Road and that
Okay,
area.
so the Bly Road area.
Yeah.
Okay.
Can I add Albany Shaker Road? Because this is not in this area.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
But there's Loudonville.
Albany Shaker Road, though, in particular. I mean, well, all right. Let's do it. We'll put a few down, but you know. Yeah. I mean, I think that list probably can be right. We could probably spend a good portion of our night just listing those. Yeah.
Just the overdevelopment where wooded areas are being cut down.
Okay,
Like,
so
for example, right by the crossings, they just ripped all that out, or even just the hotel that was put up right next to Target.
Okay. So this is related to some of the development activity, and a couple of examples that you gave near the crossings. Familiar with the one you're talking about? And what was the other one?
Right near the Target, that there, and the Pioneer Bank.
Let's just stay on this side for now. Yep. Yep.
Can I just ask a procedural question real quick?
Absolutely.
Are we, once we're done with these lists,
Yep.
are we having any discussion, or are we just going to run off a bunch of hundreds?
Glad you asked that question. What I do want to do tonight, once we have our list of concerns, is try to maybe pick like the 4 or 5 highest priority ones in your mind. And we'll just try to do that, you know, in a nice democratic way. And then I'd like to spend a little bit of time talking about those 4 or 5. All right. So
Then I would like to add lack of sidewalks.
okay. Yeah. Lack of sidewalks. I mean, again, absolutely. You know, this is one of the real challenges, especially, you know, in a community this size and with some of the more dispersed development patterns that you have in Colony.
Bike lanes as well.
You know, what's that?
Bike
lanes.
Bike lanes as well, yeah. I'll just do that here. Yeah. And certainly it gets, you know, when you combine that with the traffic, right, and then that feeling of safety when you're riding, it can be very hard to come by. Yes?
Pressure on all of the things that we like. The pressure of development and how it's occurring. Not so much that there is development, but the way in which it is occurring. Putting pressure on all of those things, the historic value of this area, the way people connect to each other in this area, the way in which we travel, the lack of all of the different ways that we can travel, and connectivity. The positives.
All right. Good. Yes?
I'm concerned about the over-residential development that's going to require more schools and increased taxes.
Okay, so so the residential in particular, because of the potential burden on schools, taxes, schools.
On all services, really.
Mm-hmm.
And all, okay. Yeah. Okay.
I think we talked as a positive that it was a very diverse town.
Yep.
But I do notice that the representation or the focus on various areas of the town are sometimes lost because maybe the membership of the town board is not reflected in those other areas of the town. The town stretches Lane towards Schenectady, Protestant School District.
Yeah.
A lot of those neighborhoods aren't represented either as town employees or on boards. So a lot of their concerns aren't necessarily focused upon when it comes time to dispense with, I don't want to call them favors, but, you know, as far as focusing on needs of that area of town. And I think that what the town may need is some type of neighborhood ombudsman in the town that can reach out to these various areas of the town and ensure that their interests are noticed and represented in budgeting, that type of thing in town. I think the town board is highly reflective of one particular area of the town, Loudonville, Manans, so they may not necessarily travel over to the other areas of the town colony and get a sense of what their needs are.
Right, right. Okay, so again, it's a big town, a lot of different needs in different parts of the town, not maybe always as well represented as they could be. Okay, yeah?
Okay, we did 3 pages of reasons why everybody moves here.
Yeah.
It was touched on as far as the roads being, they need work, okay? But there was never any foresight in making new roads. The roads are packed now. I mean, there's no movement. You can redo a road, and you can still only put a certain amount of cars. You know, with everybody moving here and businesses opening up here, I don't think there was ever any foresight in why couldn't we create new roads to alleviate some of the traffic on the roads, like Route 9. If they could build a parallel road from Route 9, where Hawkins was torn down, there's the townhouses and the apartments going in up. You know, they could have built a road up through there, connecting like, you know, 155 with Route 7 or something.
Right. So looking back at the growth of the town, we'll get your question in 1 second. Right, you're saying that, you know, although roads have been improved and maybe the condition of the roads is being taken care of, there hasn't been much foresight in terms of where to put new roads. Although
you can only put a certain amount of cars in a square mile of road.
Well, right, absolutely. Okay, yeah.
With that, there's actually there could be another view on roads. If you build it, they will come. So if you build more roads and make it more convenient for people to come through here, everyone will use the town of Colony because of our location as being the center of everything as a cut-through space. They'll jump off the Northway. They won't take 787. They'll get off the major highways where the traffic is, and they'll be using our neighborhoods and cutting through our neighborhoods. It's going to make our town less safe.
Yeah, it's a real challenge, right? I mean, road and traffic, and I know we're going to, you know, that's going to have to be obviously one of the main emphases on the plan. But you know, right, there's such a thing as induced travel, right? So you make the roads bigger, or you add roads. People find the easiest paths, and very quickly, oftentimes, those become just as crowded as they were before. That's a real challenge. Yeah.
I'm concerned over the density of some of the building,
Okay.
and the character of some of it. For example, I'm sorry, I don't know if people like it, but the park side of the building to me doesn't appeal to me at all. And I think a lot of people feel that way. There's not much trees, they're right on top of each other. To me, it seems like a place in the Bronx, or, you know. it
So,
doesn't seem-
which area in particular? I'm sorry, I missed that.
Park side of the crossing, and now on Maxwell Road, the density is going to be, you know, pretty intense. I'm trying to imagine what that density is going to look like, but it doesn't go along with the kind of character that I would like to see for the vision of my town.
All right, now is this primarily residential development? Is it commercial? Is it both?
What I'm talking about right now are residential.
These are residential. Okay. And you mentioned too, it's maybe the design, like lack of trees, landscaping, that kind of thing, or is that?
It's not appealing. I don't know. Maybe it's appealing. Obviously, they sold, but that's not how Colony looked like. You know,
Right. I think what she's talking about, part of the attraction of Colony, for those of us who grew up here,
Yeah.
was its rural aspect and the farms and the trees around in the hills and things in their natural state.
Right.
And the development is occurring in such a way that in order for the development to occur, there is no expectation that some of that natural that's already there can be kept in the development.
And the tearing down of mature trees that are 30 or 50 years old or older than that, with the expectation that the developer is going to put in baby trees.
Or replace it with something that's as good as what was there.
ornamental trees.
kinds of trees.
Yeah, that's
Right.
just a completely different feel.
Right.
Certainly. Okay. Yeah.
Over the next 5 or 10 years, there's going to be a need for a lot more local community green energy development, solar community
Forward-looking.
sources of power.
With that statement also, regulation within the town for siting that type of energy.
So okay, rule, you need. Rule,
Site-specific regulations for siting, like an array of such as what happened for the South Colony schools, should not wipe out acres of trees when there's other possible sites within the town.
Okay. Let me try to get a little bit of this side of the room, and then I'll come back over here. Yes, sir. Yeah.
That's what we're thinking, I think, is what we're talking about here. For example, somebody mentioned the Huffman Playland area. You have 200 and some odd apartments going in there. You have X number of townhouses going in there. You're going to have one exit, to my knowledge, you're going to have one exit out of there onto Route 9 with the red light. However, now you've got businesses that all park in the back there also. So you've got the businesses that are going to be customers coming in and out. You got residents that will be coming in and out, dumping onto Route 9 with one exit with a red light.
In an area that is stressed by a merge already.
Yeah, so this will need to be more, I guess I should be more forward thinking. And just so, again, the area that you're talking about?
Route 9, Huffman Park area.
Huffman? Okay. Yeah. The former Hoffman Playland.
Taking that one step further, signage. Lately, the signage that we're seeing in the area reminds me of New York City. When you see like the Pioneer Bank building on Shaker Road, with that signage up on top now, it moves back and forth and so on and so forth. With Dennis and everybody else is there. And also, I was shocked the other night when I was coming down the Northway with that new church that's by the library, by the post office. I could not believe that signage coming off from the Northway.
It's looking like Las Vegas.
All right, so these, it sounds like whatever the requirements are in place for the signage, you might want to take a closer look at it, right? Okay, fair enough. Yeah, let's go here, back there next. Yep.
Wade Road Extension and Route 7, where there used to be a juice bar on the corner that was very sad life.
Got squeezed out like
I remember that.
Did you go inside?
I'm sorry.
That's all right.
I'd like to see in that one spot there, something nice, a clock, a town clock.
This is over.
We're getting into some detailed recommendations. I'm going to put it up, but let's try to recognize that we're going to get to recommendations and things like that a little later on in the process. But let's talk about take advantage of these opportunities, right? So for placemaking or something along those lines.
Preserve a sense of place.
Sense of place. All right, I'll do that. And just so I remember, I'll do the Route 7
clock.
Road.
Juice bar.
Juice bar.
talking about a
And
euphemism.
I won't forget that anytime soon. All right, I said I'd go back here first.
So I've been here for 50 years, and we seem to have changed our way of doing things. We used to have people, and we spent years doing this at Central Ave, taking our buildings and moving them back off the road so that we had the parking lot and the trees and the stuff up front. And we moved to move our buildings to this front of the road, 35 foot off the road. And by doing that, you actually close in your experience of the town. Because all the trees and everything are behind the buildings, and we're looking at the buildings, so it's giving us more of a, urban look, like they're saying, like a Brooklyn look, than it is actually of a suburban look.
So the change to a more urban look, urban feel, you're not liking that at all.
And it also doesn't allow you to expand.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, my uncle owned a pharmacy on Albany Shaker Road. When they expanded Albany Shaker Road, basically ended that. They couldn't even get in. There was no real parking lot there. So that in the future, that's going to change your ability to make changes. So it's going to limit what we can do in the future.
Okay. Gentleman who's next to him then. Yep.
So, one of the issues we've had around here, and I'll try to put it in general, is sort of the interface with the transition to single residential zoning and other kinds of zoning in the town. And it seems to me that one of the things the town would be to make a better transitional type zone between that. I think currently the transitional zone allows for 3-story offices, right, next to single residential. And if there was something smaller as a transition area, I think that would solve a lot of problems and issues that we have at least around here.
Right. So, a transition from the residential to the commercial zones, it feels kind of abrupt, maybe? Yeah, okay. All right. Yeah?
I'd love to see a better balance of local businesses in favor of chains coming in. I worry that we're turning into like Exit 9, where everything's a chain. Here we have a large influx of burger places and hotels all of a sudden. And, I know you can't force people to come here, but maybe incentivize or something. I think it'd keep the money in the community rather than...
Right, yeah, real challenge, right? Because it's, this is more like a national...
We need a mix, but I would like to see it balanced.
Sure, yeah, I understand. Yes, sir, behind you. Yeah.
Kind of two parts. People kind of mentioned it, but I want to emphasize that there really is an overdevelopment of hotels. And because we have no real utilization of any sort of transitional zoning, we have, as was already given an example, a hotel right next to Target. So the encroachment of this type of development into our neighborhood is a huge concern and has been for a while. And it has sort of erupted recently with the proposal for a 3-story apartment complex for, right in back of people's homes off of Omega Terrace. So definitely a concern with the lack of vision for transitional zoning, concern for encroachment of different types of buildings into neighborhoods now. Omega Terrace has been here now since, what, 30 years now, right? 25 years. And so it's, and across the street you have Forksbury Road and Brunswick, has been here forever. So, it's time to deal with those types of issues.
Okay.
And hopefully we'll get to that point at this point.
Okay.
Oh, the other point is the lack of diversity in our housing needs. There are issues with proposals related to people with special needs, not having, there's a proposal for building for people with special needs, low-income seniors, and low-income housing that has not happened in this town for whatever reasons. I know there was a lawsuit. I don't know what the status is. I hope they can resolve it. But, that's part of our diversity. We have jobs here, but people can't afford to live here when they're making $10 an hour. So we want people to stay in our community, and be a part of our community and work in these jobs. They need a place to live. So I think that needs to be built in some way.
So we've got, I mean, you know, on the list we had fair amount of housing diversity, but it sounds like what we're saying is that there's still some needs that are not being met, particularly special needs, affordable housing. Okay. Yeah.
I want to see our town maybe redefine the definition of seniors, or maybe have 2 levels of seniors, because I'm a 71-year-old senior and I would not care to move into a 2-story house. And that's what's being developed on Maxwell Road. Although there's a bedroom downstairs, I want to be able to use my upstairs room, so it would make it silly for me to move from my 2-story house now to go to a senior house, and it has the same configuration there. So, and also, I don't know if it's done statewide or nationally, but this idea of seniors only driving out of their house, you know, once in the morning and once at night, I don't know what it's ridiculous.
I think she's.
Nowadays, the seniors don't just sit home. They go babysit for their grandchildren. They go to different activities. So I think that that's a big problem. Is the way they're defining.
I think she's also talking about the age 55 as a senior. There's a vast difference between that and an actual senior.
The other thing I think you were saying, though, is that maybe the way we think about trip generation, which is
right, yeah.
For seniors,
Different senior and senior
segments.
Well, just the amount of trips that I was told were going to be generated by a housing unit of 34 houses was like 60 or something like that. It was absurd. So it wasn't just for senior housing. I'm concerned about how the town generates what they expect traffic patterns to be when most of the homes that have been built have 2-car garages. Some of them have 3-car garages, and there's tremendous traffic. So it keeps coming around to planning for traffic realistically, thank you. When looking at the development that's being planned here, there, and everywhere in the town of Colony, and taking a look at the existing roads that whether they can accommodate this increased traffic and create safety for people who live there.
Okay. So
I think what she's stating, I think she's really looking at cumulative impacts.
Okay. Yeah.
That has there really been? I know there's some different traffic studies that are being talked about over in the Albany Shaker area, but has there really been a town-wide traffic study to assess the impacts of every traffic throughout the whole town of Colony, not just piecemeal examination, development by development, with that same calculation of 1.25 cars per house.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, that's a real, typically when you look at cumulative impact, things like the GEIS looks at the airport area, and you've got areas in the town where that's looked at much more carefully.
But there's not a blanket looking of the whole town,
right.
I think is remiss, or that studies that have been done maybe 20 years ago have never been updated to reflect current traffic thinking and traffic patterns and things like that. So I think rather than engage in a piecemeal approach, I think that the town should look at an entire town approach to traffic.
Okay. All right. Yeah.
Hopefully this is an easy one for us to fix. I think I applaud the town for having a better webpage now, meetings like this with outreach, but I think there's more that we can do. Something that, the town is turning over, there's a younger generation out there, and something as simple as a Facebook page or a Twitter feed where you can get information out to get a younger group of people involved in the town. My neighborhood, I'm now one of the older people in the neighborhood, which is...
Happens fast, doesn't it?
It does. But it's, I think we want to continue to build that sense of community, and I think, it can only help with transparency and make people feel involved.
Yeah, yeah, can always do better, and certainly, yeah, all right, fair enough. Wow, okay, let's go, yep, right there.
Well, I just want to jump off of what this gentleman just said. Today, I drove down Pollock Road, and I saw the notices of the public hearing. Now, the way I usually find out about public hearings for developmental proposals are by these little flyers that are stuck up the side of the road. Most of the time, you take your life in your hands to pull over and go and read things. That's if you get to them before they blow away. But it is a signal that something's happening there, and if I don't get to it, I can then go to the webpage and find out. I've been kind of complaining about this for decades, that this is a really inefficient way to notify people, especially the people who live closest to the proposed development. So, kind of bouncing off what this guy said, we have to do a better job than this. We have to engage the community, not just when there's a public hearing, but when something is coming down the pipe. So we know way ahead of time what's being thought about, what might be coming in, and we can then communicate our concerns even before we get to the point of the public hearing.
But positive things too.
Yeah,
harvest faster,
all alternate. I'm just, we're talking about.
Yeah, no.
But absolutely, other things.
Yeah. All right, let's go in the back, and then I'll come to the front. Yeah.
So with that, it's just 5 Ps. Proper planning prevents poor performance. So
What's that? Sorry.
Proper. So with that, it's just 5 Ps. Proper planning prevents poor performance. Right. So when we did the last plan that they did these planned development communities or development districts, and that's actually allowed. It wasn't planned properly, in my opinion. It's allowed developers to actually overdevelop sites because they're using the loopholes that were in that overdeveloping sites.
Yeah, but what was the last?
Proper planning prevents poor performance. You're going to be tested. Next meeting, I'm going to ask you what the 5 Ps are.
Planned development zones that we got developers that are actually taking advantage of the fact that we did not tighten our statements in that.
Right. Yeah.
And they're over
I agree.
building on the property, taking advantage of green areas and using wetlands and all that.
Yeah, PDD is a tough tool because it's one of those things that can result in some flexibility and you can create some good outcomes, but it can also be sometimes, if it's not well considered, it can result in things that you don't want. So that is always a challenge with PDD and how it's implemented. Yeah.
I think Ross was commented on some of the nice things. We have some very nice bike paths in the town along the river and the other places. But I think what could be improved is access from residential areas to those bike paths. So connector bike paths to, across the Rainham, down by the river. But another example is by the airport, I think they widen Waterloo Shaker Road. There's a bike path there. It's maybe a mile, 2 miles long. It doesn't go near any residential areas. I stopped at the hotel and walked the road from there.
Right.
I never see people with bicycles on it because there's no easy way to get there except like driving.
Right. So rather than when it's possible, it would be nice to not have to drive to the bike path if you can get there safely and the way. Understood.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah. Yes.
We try to preserve some of the farms that are left in Colony. There was an argument about putting a dentist's office on piece property and all the problems surrounding the use of fertilizers. We have very few farms left in Colony.
Right.
There's a new one on Forts Ferry Road.
Some of the agriculture.
Yeah.
Okay. There's a new one on
Forts Ferry Road.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
That just started up this year.
Oh, okay.
So
Well, farming is changing too.
Yeah.
There's other, and there are young people in the town surrounding Colony that are starting
micro farming.
not just micro farming, but alternative methods of farming,
Right.
and going back to the good methods of farming that are healthy for the soils.
Yeah. Okay. Yes?
Consideration of redevelopment or new development.
Redevelopment
Yes.
before new development, I see. Right.
Here, here.
Amen.
Redevelopment before redevelopment. Yeah, so there's certainly, places in the town where, for example, down near Watervliet, right, there's a brownfield area that the town is just starting to take a look at. Right? So it's an old industrial site. It's got pollution and other issues that need to be addressed, but, maybe that's an opportunity to redevelop a site that's now kind of lying fallow, right?
We have quite a few vacant areas now, because this is at Walmart, or Kmart.
Yeah, Kmart.
Yeah.
Okay, that's another word.
That's another one. Okay.
Because like the whole world, we have where those areas used to be, what's going to happen there?
Mhm.
Yeah, we're looking at building new hotels right next to Wolf Road, and we build even new Maxwell Road extension.
Right.
Now you're going to have, there's an area there on Wolf Road, there could be another hotel there. I mean, that's privately owned, so I mean, that's consideration.
Okay.
But utilizing the spaces that are now vacant
Yep.
and period, to look for new development build there.
Better incentives for redevelopment. I mean,
You're not tearing down more trees and green spaces.
right.
Yeah.
The Kmart is owned by a company. I don't know the whole all of the details, but it's owned by a company that doesn't. It's out of this area,
Yeah.
and they're unwilling to, or are not incentivized to do anything other than what's being done
Sometimes
with it.
there are financial, accounting reasons why people will hold on to something that you would think
That's a prime piece of
working for
property
them,
in this
right?
town.
It's a loss that they can write off, or whatever the case may be. But yeah, if there's some way to incentivize, people not holding on to those. Yeah. What's that?
The old First Prize.
The old First Prize building. Yeah. That's been a problem for a long time. Yeah. Okay. What else?
Railroad Avenue.
Railroad Avenue. Yeah. I know that there was, following the last plan, there was a redevelopment plan for Railroad Avenue. I haven't. I think some of that has been implemented, which is, and there's been some change. But maybe that's an example of what we want to try to do elsewhere. Not the same form necessarily, but I mean, just looking at an area like that. Okay. Yeah.
Besides the farmland, is there any way of finding monies to preserve open spaces before there are no open spaces left?
Well, yeah, there's there are a number of different ways to do that.
I guess.
For instance, we have the Crossings Park, which is lovely, but it's getting really popular and crowded. And I'm thinking, well, too bad we can't get some, I know it's a lot of money, but maybe we can find some way of doing that.
Yeah. I mean, we'll talk more about some of this as we get a little further along, but I mean, there are ways that you can, the communities raise money on a regular basis for open space conservation. You can use like the real estate transfer tax. You can set aside a small portion of that for open space conservation. There's a lot of things like that, examples that we can look at from elsewhere and see if there's something that might work here, if that's something that the town is interested in doing. What else? Yeah.
I want to go back to I love Colony. I really don't. I love living here. I lived in New York City for a year, and I came back here because of the centralized location in the community. So I love Colony. But when you talked about the Railroad Avenue, I think there's great potential for Railroad Avenue. I know I've said it before, and he was talking about the younger generation. I think it said in a news article that by 2020, 13.2% of our population will be between the ages of 25 and 34, and that's supposed to diminish throughout the next decade. And as you have that expansion going on at SUNY Albany, SUNY Polytechnic, and the Harriman State Office campus, I think there's real opportunity to use Railroad Avenue and Fuller Road to promote to that demographic.
Okay, so proximity to the city, and you mentioned this at one of our committee meetings too, right? But that maybe there's an opportunity to piggyback off of some of that. Makes some sense. What else? A lot of good, a lot of concerns and some ideas along with them, which is great. Anything else? Other concerns, issues that you think we should be thinking about in the plan, you know, especially if it's not something that we've heard thus far, or if you haven't had a chance to speak and you want to. Anything? All right, let's try to think about now. I'm going to go back through this list a little bit, just like we did with the positives. And I want to just see if we can't, without having to get too elaborate here, try to figure out what maybe of all these things, we have to think of like 4 or 5 categories. What are the most important, you know, concerns that we want to, and I'm going to just venture to say traffic has got to be one of them, right? So we could just go ahead and write traffic.
Yeah.
All right, let's do that. So we're going to talk about traffic just a little bit.
The pressure of the development, the methods of development that are currently used, those, that's a pretty broad topic. But
Development pressure and the form, and, all of that, right? That's-
yeah.
Quality of life is what somebody said. Is that? But that's almost like too broad. Maybe I don't know.
Well,
What
it goes along with the pressure, the
Development of pressure.
goes with that?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. What else? Yeah.
Basically, over and over, we were saying preservation of natural
Green
space.
space.
Okay. Yep.
Whether it's open space, wooded space, wetlands, things like that, that all comes back to that natural spaces.
All right. So open space conservation. Yeah. All right. And yeah.
This may be on the same theme, but encouraging design or whatever, the reuse vacant buildings.
All right. So that was right. So that was one of the comments we had there. I mean, is that do we want to is redevelopment and you know should that be one of our
I think it's a subset of the development.
Yeah.
A subset of this.
Right.
All right. Maybe it's a subset of this.
Yeah.
Let's take a look here one more time. Let me just quickly take a look back. Traffic, we talked about infrastructure, water and roads in certain areas of the town, maybe not as good as others. So here we have the loss of wooded areas, the development form. Bike and ped access, that maybe relates to traffic, but it could also be its own
Development too.
Its own thing. Pressure of development, we've got that I think pretty well covered. Overdevelopment of residential in particular.
Summarize like keeping neighborhoods intact.
Okay.
And going towards quality of life, like that the focus of
Maybe
further development should be number one, focus on preservation of existing neighborhoods and encourage that as a top priority.
Preservation of neighborhoods. All right. All right. See, what I want to do, if we can, we don't have to have 5. We've got 3 big ones right now. So let's see if we maybe, yeah.
I think infrastructure is vital. I mean, if you don't have a good I know they said there's great infrastructure, but that definitely should be made sure that's really going to hold what they're developing.
Okay.
You know, that ties into every one of them. It ties into the traffic. It ties into water. It ties into everything.
They're all related to one another, obviously, right? I mean, these are sort of false separations to some degree, but you know, yeah.
So I'm going to put things together. Someone I think brought up block sidewalks.
Yeah.
And I brought up bike lanes. I think that's a little different than traffic in my mind. Making walkable neighborhoods, I think helps the community and perhaps improves the sense of community in the town. And I know it's harder because we're an older town, some, the outlying suburbs that, you're thinking about that.
Right. Okay.
I don't know if this is under development, but the type of development, the type of projects that people talk a lot about it, hotels,
Got a lot of hotels.
Yeah. But in weird spots, in Wolf Road, yes, but
All right. So let's.
Road, yeah.
Yeah. So let's just spend a few minutes. I mean, this is obviously going to be a very difficult thing to do, and we're going to have more conversations beyond tonight. So don't feel like this is our last word on any of these things. But traffic, it's a big issue, right? And there's a lot of intersecting things that are going on here. But if we're trying to think forward, what are we trying to accomplish with regard to this? And then, is it that we want to just have the free flow of traffic? I don't want to wait at any light, right? I got someplace to go. I want to get there out of my way, right? But everyone thinks the same thing. They're sitting in their car, thinking the same thing about the guy in the car next to them, right? So, realistically, what do we want to accomplish in terms of traffic? And then obviously, none of this is going to be simple. Right, so how do we do it? How to? And this is just a starter. Obviously we have months to talk about these issues, and we will. But what is it about traffic? What would we like to be able to accomplish with regard?
Better collaboration between the organizations that manage the roadways within our town.
So better coordination.
Coordination and collaboration. Right. In other words, we're thinking about putting, 100 houses, 200 houses down the road in 5 years. Let's go to DOT now and look forward.
Right. So,
what is that going to do to this roadway?
Okay. So you bring up a great point, right? Because you were at the meeting, I think the committee meeting last week, right? There are town roads, there are county roads, there are state roads, there are federal highways. Right. So there's a lot of overlapping layers. So involving.
Be responsive, not reactionary.
Right. Try to be.
Proactive.
Proactive, less reaction. And just to, for those that aren't familiar with it, I know someone mentioned earlier that there are studies of certain corridors that are being proposed and will be coming. This region actually does a fair job of that compared to some, and that they do set aside money every year to work with communities and look at these corridors and actually try to plan ahead. And I know that sounds like maybe, well, why doesn't it? Everyone does that, right? It's actually not the case. Not every region
But still,
does.
we
still have more work to do.
That's the baseline for us.
Right.
We're in a great community, and we can have better.
We can do better. Okay, fair enough. What else about it?
I think in a lot of cases, traffic is a symptom, right? It's a symptom of either overdevelopment or people are trying to get through but not to. So I think kind of tracing that back and understanding, why do we have traffic in certain places? I'm sure that's being done, but the other part of it is, looking at, so take Latham Circle, for example, that has grown, it looks like beyond capacity. Whereas I look at the new SPUI, I guess it's not new anymore, but, at Exit 6, that was fantastic, I have to say. I was very skeptical at the beginning, and that made a huge difference in the traffic problem. So can we take that model of, doing something innovative, because you still don't see those anywhere, but it worked for that situation.
Yeah.
What can we do something about Latham Circle or the bottlenecks on Route 9?
Okay. So what do we do about some of the other bottlenecks, right? Because that was a big one back, 10, 15 years ago when they were starting to talk about the single point urban interchange, for those that are not familiar with SPUI. But that's the overpass on where Route 7 goes over the Northway. What do we do with other bottlenecks? And you mentioned Latham Circle. And there's clearly some real pressure.
One by Osborne, and Route 9, that 5-way fence that's there. That's another example of more people coming from across the river up 378 or coming from Albany to Colony.
Right.
It's just overgrown that area.
Not for these examples, obviously, not Latham Circle or Osborne or maybe Route 9. We were talking about earlier the possibility of getting money for green space. It may be, in a perfect world, the town could get some money together to buy some of the green space that would not be developed, causing even more traffic problems. Yeah.
Right. So we'll, I think, understood. I know. Okay. Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Sorry. Yeah.
Having an independent process for traffic studies. So, for example, I've been at a lot of planning board meetings in my day, and they always, you pick any project, we're going to have 500 parking spaces, but the traffic study says no impact on the local traffic. So it's like, are you kidding me? But they have the study, they have the experts, and the planning board, is sort of stuck. We have the report here, and even though it defies logic, because if you think your business is going to be successful, it means traffic coming in and out. Yet they're trying to sell us a story about how that doesn't happen. So I think part of the problem is we don't have a real independent way of checking against those kinds of claims. And then the project gets built, and guess what happens? Exactly what they said wouldn't happen.
Right.
And this partially maybe gets to the cumulative notion too that was mentioned earlier, I think, right? I mean, it's not necessarily an individual project so much as a series of things going on together in a particular area. Yeah, want to get maybe right there?
You're talking about roads.
Yeah.
Well, I like the traffic of roads. We need our roads repaired badly around this area. They've been paved in chunks, and every year they repave them in chunks instead of just doing them the right way and get them done. And I can give you plenty of areas right in the area around here.
One patching crew for the whole town of Colony isn't covered.
One of the things that I've found interesting from a historical standpoint is, we built all these roads and highways over the last 50 or so years, and now we're at a kind of a point where we can't even take care of what we have, never mind building new ones, right? And that's a real challenge, not just here, but nationally, across the board. All right, what else? Let's do a couple more things here on the traffic before we move on to the next thing, just by necessity. I got 4 hands up, and I'm going to hit those 4. So, you're first. Yeah.
The traffic we have now is not going to get any less than we have right today.
Right.
But yet, if you look at it, we have probably 4 major highways that we're talking about the backup for very lengthy periods of time. But yet, we continue to build on these same roads continuously. So how can you curtail the building of these roads because they're only going to dump more traffic onto those 4 major roads?
Or people on the minor roads trying to cut through.
Well, look what they did on Shaker Road. There was a gentleman who was going to build 80 townhouses there, and thank God the planning board said no. Because you can't even you have to make a right-hand turn, because there's no way you can make a left-hand turn and go on the Shaker Road to go down toward Albany or wherever you're going to go. So the planning board did a great job of saying, it's not going to happen. And that's the kind of forward thinking we have to look at, because we're just dumping more and more traffic onto these roads.
Right.
And we're not building new roads. Right. We're just going to be in a worse situation 5-10 years from now.
I'd like to spin it a little more positively. Planner and professional plan for disclosure. And transportation choices are not necessarily an adverse, necessary result from development. Driverless cars are definitely coming in. There's ride sharing, Zipcar. A lot of millennials are not buying and driving cars like baby boomers did. We've seen auto-centric society come to its peak, and now it's swinging away from the auto-centric. So this is a very positive thing. This comprehensive plan provides a once-in-a-decade or longer opportunity to polish our crystal ball collectively as a community. And I would like to offer an optimistic view that we should anticipate transportation choices to include the commuters that I see on the bikeway. The bikeway shouldn't be limited to just daylight use. I would support it. I know the grass on both sides of the bikeway. There are commuters. There are bicycles with lights and briefcases. I see dozens of commuters going to Knowles or GE Global Research from the O's on the places. I'm glad to see them on my one. So these are transportation choices. Driverless cars are coming in. Autonomous vehicles are also known as. Younger people are doing other things, transit opportunities on the main thoroughfares, that you're seeing today, and other transit services provide great relief of congestion, and we're recognizing that there's an adverse effect on the neighborhoods and the community. Relief comes from smart transportation choices. So smart growth, smart transportation choices should be anticipated in the comprehensive plan. So that's a positive spin on, no one likes to sit in traffic, but we're not quite as bad as Long Island or New Jersey or everywhere else.
Well, every place, it is relative to some degree, right? I mean, every place, traffic is an issue everywhere, but it doesn't mean that it's not an issue for real too, right? So
I want to thank him for what his statement was, because I was afraid to say it because it sounds too space agey, and I've gotten many faces for the kinds of things that he's saying. But I don't even know if this actually fits with traffic, but with how many pedestrians have been hit on Central and on Route 9 now, in those especially areas where the intersection for crossing is particularly dangerous, like the one near Latham Farms on Route 9. There are other ways. It might be a little costly for pedestrians to cross. There's bridgeways that go over, that kind of thing. And if you're going to be looking at the connectivity of biking, as someone who has pedaled on Route 9, I can tell you right here and now, more of that kind of thing. I'll pick my bike up and put it on my shoulder and trot right over the top of a bridge, but I won't pedal down there. Because it's not just the way the interchange is set up, it's the distraction and the anger in the drivers that risk the person on the bike.
Okay, and there was one more.
It was me, but I was...
You're done. All right, good. Let's move on, because we're going to very quickly... Yeah.
Consideration of roundabouts?
Of what?
Consideration of roundabouts?
Oh, roundabouts. More of them?
I would think more.
Oh, you like...
Well, if it's done properly, yes.
Yes, bigger, rounder, so they can't drive straight through them.
Well-designed roundabouts.
Yes.
In appropriate locations.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, they do work. I know people, it's a favorite thing for people to really complain about, but they do work. All right, we're going to talk a little bit about, this is going to be just too huge, but let's spend a few minutes on the development pressure. What do we want to be able to say?
Coming from the SAVE group, the first and foremost, we are a really great community. We don't have to settle. We should be setting the bar higher and asking for things from developers, things such as contributions towards open space, things such as bike paths that cut through existing neighborhoods that connect the new neighborhood to the bike path. There's all kinds of things that we can be asking for that we are not asking for from the developers. And developers across the state, in New York only, are very used to that expectation now.
Okay, right. So
and would like to be a part of that.
Right. Okay. Not being afraid to ask for some of these things. Okay. Yeah. Other things that we'd like to be able to say in terms of development pressure with regard to this issue. And I realize this one's almost like too big, but let's just get a few more things. Huh?
Density issues. Putting
Yeah.
50 units in a 13 acres, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
We need to think carefully about where this is and is not appropriate, right? Okay. What else?
I would say community engagement at a much earlier time in the process.
Would anyone mind playing the heavy? Yeah. Someone's got to do it. So earlier community input, review.
I think that goes along with the issue of neighborhoods and what I had raised earlier about a mechanism within the town to identify and encourage neighborhood participation in the planning process, and not in a reactive way, so that, and I don't know if it's through a neighborhood coalition, utilizing that mechanism, but that a neighborhood is not called upon to comment and participate in the planning process after a project has been fully crystallized.
Right.
And react.
It's almost too late at that
It's
point.
too late, and
Yeah.
it's putting a burden on the neighborhood to suddenly become a planning expert.
Okay.
Instead of having the planning board look at each development as a separate entity, having them look at what else is happening in development terms in the area.
And, you know, you gotta be perfectly honest with you, Colony in many ways does this better than lots of places do. And I'm just saying to be, you know, from experience around the state, the GEIS process that Colony uses is actually groundbreaking in New York State. We talk about it in other parts of the state as a model, frankly. Not that it necessarily results in great outcomes all the time. I do understand that. But I'm saying that the idea that you even are doing that, and then using, because in New York State you can't just charge developers for their impacts. Like some states you can. I mean, there's impact fees. All right. In New York State, that's actually there's very limited ability to do that. Through SEQR, through the environmental review process, that's actually one of the few ways that you can. And Colony is one of the first places that's done that. And so, again, I realize maybe the outcomes could be better, or we can focus on those, but the process is actually really progressive, and it's meant to do that. Now, it may not do that in all parts of the town. I realize that there's certain areas that it does, but not
Also, the idea that's in the existing plan of having green space set aside in certain parts of the town with smaller homes or whatever, that has loopholes in it also that need to be addressed. Although it's a great idea.
Right. So watch for ways that maybe people are avoiding that. Okay, let's get a couple more here, and then let's get on so we can stick to our time.
I'd like to see sort of reform of the PDD process, tightening up the requirements.
Reform the PDD process, and was there another end?
This is where you talk about zoning, maybe?
Yeah.
Reviewing the zoning requirements in the areas, various areas.
Yeah. Okay. Pretty good, a lot of good ideas. All right, the whole, kind of a nice segment, natural space, open space conservation, right? So what would we like to accomplish there? Is it, I mean, I've heard you talk a little bit about maybe a funding mechanism. Is that, you know, something that would...
Budgeting so that there would be funding available to leverage funding available.
Funding, right? So whether it's budget or some other mechanism or...
Any one of the above.
Yeah. What's that?
Looking for grants for funding?
Grants, yeah.
Well, to do the grants, you have to have the match funding.
Well, right, yeah, I mean, absolutely. I've worked with towns that, where, they've set aside money maybe on a regular basis and specifically to match grants, right? Because that's always a requirement. But, I mentioned earlier some of the other mechanisms might be having the development, kind of an elegant way of raising some funds. We'll talk more about that.
Like even volunteerism, I mean, those of us who use, at the town park at least once or twice a week, we would be happy to volunteer a few hours on the weekend to help maintain the park.
For maintenance, that's it, yeah. The whole notion of like, the friends of, kind of a thing, right? Friends of the park, friends of the crossings.
And I think we are talking about Friends of the Colony Town Park.
Oh, yeah?
The organization together there. And also looking at the location of open space with relative to schools, how that could, be used for educational purposes. I know there's open space right next to the Colony, South Colony High School. That's under pressure for development right now, that should be looked at. Could that be an asset for the community to keep that? It's adjacent to the Colony Central High School.
I was going to make a bad joke about what happens in open space near the schools, but let's not deteriorate. Yeah.
Pocket parks, I know
Pocket parks.
the town has some of them. I don't know how well distributed.
Right. So looking maybe at areas that are not served as well by the parks. I mean, you do have some grand, beautiful parks, but maybe there are neighborhood level kind of pocket parks. That makes sense. What else? Okay. It's good. I mean, again, this is not the last night we're going to talk about any of these things. This is just a start.
I think the main thing is to have it be one of the priorities, which it is.
Yeah.
Right. So that the town mothers and fathers know that that's what
that's one
we're
of the
saying.
things
Yeah.
that needs to be focused on. Understood. All right. Infrastructure. I don't know. I mean, what else do we want to say that we haven't said so far about this issue, infrastructure?
Well, we were told at one meeting that there was no money for improving the infrastructure for water pipes, and that's just not the case. I mean, I saw an article in the paper with a local town that got $2 million to improve old, or renovate old water pipes. And Mr. Una has been engaged in doing exactly that as well on Pierce Road. Okay. So, yeah.
So for water pipes and in particular, there might be grant money out there.
There is.
Well, positioning for that, yeah.
A lot of times, the availability of grants is tied to income. So maybe that areas of the town could be eligible for, grants maybe that others are not. So there's a lot of different ways to look at it. Absolutely, there are sources out there for funding for infrastructure. Absolutely. What else on infrastructure?
I don't know much about that kind of thing, but I want to make sure the sewer system is adequate for the building and doing things like that.
Right, we just want to make sure, so, right, evaluating this in terms of with development, right? Making sure that we're staying ahead of that.
Some kind of check and balance so that it's periodically looked at, maybe that's being done.
Yeah, and I think to some extent it is, and we're going to explore that more, but it's certainly an important thing to be doing. I believe the last item is the notion of making the town more walkable and bikeable.
But you need to add something about the roads for under infrastructure, that there are many roads that need resurfacing, existing roads.
And in terms of development occurring in older neighborhoods, developers certainly can help with that.
Yeah, right. Absolutely. All right, walkable and bikeable. So what do we want to accomplish with regard to this? I think we've already started to put, someone mentioned earlier, like the connections between neighborhoods and trails. Right? So it's kind of that next layer. We've got this really great regional and town-wide system, the bike trails that you do have, but making those connections easier.
Also, not just connecting neighborhoods to public spaces, but also to like the commercial. Like I see a ton of people walking on the side of the road at Forts Ferry. That's really dangerous.
Mm-hmm.
That could be like sidewalks there.
Right. I remember years sidewalks on Wolf Road. You know, who's going to walk on Wolf Road? Come on. You know, you go out there at lunchtime, and it's tons of people walking all the time. Right? It's amazing. So you give people a safe place to go, and you might just be surprised sometimes. What else? What else do we want to say with regard to walking and biking? Yeah?
I just wanted to add and take the steps to make it safe to do these things.
Yeah.
You mentioned some problems with pedestrian being hit and killed in various spots. Out, we need to work with our, I think both of those two roadways happen to be state roads.
Yeah.
So we obviously need cooperation from the state to help us address that. And they have already, but I think we need, we have to do more.
Got to do more.
Clearly, people are still getting in.
Right. Okay.
I think you have to make clear, like we're talking about walking and bikeable, but, when you have a planning board and you have projects that are before the planning board, whether or not that's prioritized in the plans that are being reviewed at the time that they're before the planning board, like sidewalks. There is this bike pathway plan that's in draft format, I believe.
Yeah.
That's never been finalized. So is there a regulatory hook so that the planning board can't act until that issue's been addressed within the plans that are before them? And whether or not there's an escrow fund that's supposed to be collecting monies for the sidewalk, it's unclear. Whether or not in this plan there is a sidewalk escrow fund in the town. Is it funded? What's the policy of funding this escrow account to put in the sidewalks? Unclear.
Okay.
So you can have these objectives, but then you need the regulatory hook so that it is actually not lost in the shuffle.
Okay.
Especially about bike path connectivity. But the plans have to accommodate that. I mean, it should be
Right. There's always, I think we talked about this at the last committee meeting too, that there's always that challenge, like this first project in a particular area, maybe, the notion of putting the sidewalk in front of it feels, maybe like it doesn't make sense because it's not connected to anything. And, you have to take the long-term view of, well, over time, maybe you put all those pieces together, you've got something.
Well, that's why you would have the escrow.
That's why you have the escrow
for
fund.
contribution, and then when it came time to do this project, you'd have all
You'd
the
have the
money.
money in
So my
place.
question is, we do have this, but where is it?
Okay. Is it working? I'll learn more about that, right? Okay. What else? Any other thoughts? Yes.
Well, couldn't residential developments be planned to be walkable with the kinds of services that people want to walk to? Local shops, local attractions, things that you want to walk to. When people are looking for a walkable community to move to, it's not just because there are sidewalks there, it's because there are places you want to walk to.
And so neat places to walk to, that people want to walk to, so destinations. Now, it's interesting that you bring that up, because, that almost, to me, sounds like, that's the kind of thing that's, I think, envisioned with something like a PDD, is that you might actually develop a more complete kind of a setting, right, that has some mix of uses and that kind of thing. But it may not, in practice, it doesn't seem like that's what's happening. But, all right, I'm getting punchy. Yes?
Lights.
What's that?
If you're walking on a sidewalk at night, you need lights.
Oh, lighting, yeah. Part of the safety question, right? Yeah. Yeah, isn't it shocking when you go, when you leave work these days? And Wellwood. Oh, yeah.
But
And that can also mean like lighting that isn't polluting, right?
Exactly.
Like that's
Yeah.
well designed, downward
Exactly.
facing lighting, and right, understood. Yeah. Okay. Anything else on walking and biking?
I just want to say the places that are there already, if we could somehow add, like for instance, on Maxwell Road.
Yeah.
Really, you could walk up to Route 9 and go to those stores, but you fall and you break your arm or your foot. And
She did.
I did. I broke my arm walking this year. So I like to walk, and I can't. And along Maxwell Road, so you
Mhm.
can't really get anywhere without getting in your car to take a walk,
It's awful.
without really taking the life in your hands along Maxwell, and
There is no sidewalk over there.
up there.
There is
I don't know if there's room for sidewalks, but I'm not sure why that seems like it wouldn't be that hard to do.
So looking at opportunities to retrofit in some of the already developed areas and yeah, okay. Good. A lot of good ideas. Very, very good. Thank you. So just to kind of wrap things up here, I did want to remind you our next committee meeting. Is that right? Now I'm looking at it. Is it Thursday or Wednesday? Joe, do you?
That's Wednesday.
That's Wednesday the
Yes.
16th? So I just have the wrong day on there.
Yeah.
Okay, you look at it enough times, you would think you'd pick that up. No. All right, so Wednesday, November 16th, I'm sorry about that, 6 o'clock at the Public Operations Center. The community workshops, the next one's coming up. Loudonville is on November 29th, Shaker Junior High on December 1st, Leishman Middle School on the 7th of December, and at the Crossings on the 14th. Please let folks know, we're going to try to get, I know we had a little trouble getting the flyers dispersed as much as we wanted to. We're going to make more effort to do